today we are actually here with panelist Keisha L. Jackson, a U.S. Air Force veteran and family caregiver. And she has as a guest Dr. Connie Siskowski, registered nurse, PhD, and president and founder of the American Association of Caregiving Youth. Today's discussion is going to be about the American Association of Caregiving Youth, the kids, our family, caregivers too. So the kids actually play a role, and we're going to be talking about that. How are you doing, Keisha? Well, I think you're on mute, Keisha. Okay. How are we doing, Connie? I think Keisha's having a little bit of technical.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing really well and very thankful to have this opportunity, and thank you all for your service to our country.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. But you bring up a really important issue, and all of us automatically think about adults when we think about caregivers and their roles and responsibility in taking care of those people who need care in the family. But the kids play a role too.
They certainly do, and they certainly are under the radar screen. So, as you said, people think about adults as family caregivers, and even the term caregivers has multiple meanings. It can be somebody who's paid, somebody who's a daycare worker, and so I think it's really great to be sure that we reference this population as family caregivers, and in our particular work, caregiving youth. And I might just mention that in the very beginning, we called our work the Young Caregiver Project. But then, young is such a subjective term that people thought we meant people in their 20s or even 30s, never even expecting that this population is fulfilling such an important role in our country.
Yeah, because my wife always says she's much younger than I am. There's only about 2 years separating us. So I have to shout out to her. Our anniversary is on the 6th in a couple of days. So
yeah, one of my good nursing friends she's a little older than I am, about 6 weeks. So I always tease her too. You're older than I am.
So how does this relate to veterans?
Well, military children have a really important role in their whole family. And, we are trying to focus on family-centered care. So, and really to normalize this experience for children. Because if you're caring for somebody who's been injured or somebody who's had a stroke or who has ALS or whatever health condition, the effects on the children are the same, right? Because they want to be normal, particularly, I don't know if you can remember when you were in middle school and, your body is changing, your hormones are raging, and you just want to be like everybody else. And so actually these days you have to put on 2 masks, one that you wear all the time to let people think that everything's okay, and the other certainly as it relates to COVID. So people, I think, are starting to recognize this population within the military. And why I'm saying that I wish we could be more family-focused even in the VA system is because you can have somebody who's been deployed or stationed somewhere and come home and their spouse is sick, or perhaps the grandparent has moved in and has had a stroke. And so the children are still impacted, and the whole family needs support in addition to the veteran. Now, I believe the Veterans Administration just recently in August has augmented their program to support family caregivers, in which they provide a stipend, which is great. It's so on the forefront and needed but you have to be 18 or older. But with this new legislation, you're able to not only have a primary caregiver, but also a secondary. I think up to 2 secondaries, so that there's reimbursement for those people in the family who participate in care. Because one person can't do it all. One organization can't do it all.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Keisha, I always had to congratulate and thank her for her 22 years of service in the Air Force, as a veteran. And, after caregiving for her mother, who had stage 4 inoperable lung cancer, Keisha started really learning about caregiving and the resources to share with other caregivers. So she's really been a champion of this. So Keisha, what is your take on kids giving care, and how do you see them being part of this picture?
Hi, Dr. Arnold. First of all, sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, sure. Well, we've been having them since we had some last week because people were in Louisiana. We had people in New York and New Jersey. With all the flooding and all the disasters going on, it's just adding to the complexity of actually doing, the broadcasting. So this is absolutely understandable.
Yeah. Well, this topic by far is so important to me and so dear to me. Pretty much my entire adult life, even in my time in the military, in some fashion, I've worked with youth from nurseries to juvenile detention to fostering children or helping with foster care of children to mentoring at all different aspects, a crisis intervention hotline. And so teenage caregivers, young caregivers, regardless of what their age, it is something that's often overlooked. Is missed out. I think now the statistic is there's like 3.4 or either 5.4 million children that are estimated to be caregiving for one or more family member. And so this is very important because now they're not able to be as active in school. They may be missing out on sports, their social life. They're developing more stress. So this is a very, very important topic. So what I'm hoping through America's Heroes Group and those that are listening is that we really can rally Dr. Connie for what she's doing, her initiative, her effort, help get the word out, and also be sensitive to the youth that are out there caring for their loved ones.
Yeah, because, one of the things, Dr. Connie, that you were mentioning, you were talking about the roles people are playing as youth and all that, but, I understand that, you brought national recognition to the fact that children and adolescents in the United States, are really playing a dual role, both as students and caregivers for chronically ill, frail, and disabled family members. So, one of the things that you don't often think about, because we do have single parents out there who are sometimes sort of run the gauntlet because they have, to take care of children and make sure they show up on work on time, and it's very, very complex for how they have to deal with that kind of thing. Actually, I grew up with a single mom, so she was a social worker, so she had to, really be in 8 different worlds at the same time. But these students and as caregivers, they should not be penalized, right? Because they are trying to take care of family members where we don't really have an adequate mechanism in society right now to supply that kind of caregiving.
Well, and that's absolutely true. And it's a big issue, but in the UK, they have been supporting this population since the early 1990s. And it was when I went to the first international conference on family caregiving in London in 1998 that I really learned about what they call young carers there. And I took care of my grandfather when I was in middle school, and it really impacted my life as an adult, not professionally, but personally. And so this work is really about trying to support the children, recognize them, help them achieve academically and personally, and, have society value them, as well as initiate legislation on their behalf. And this is really important because essentially all of the support for family caregivers, you have to be 18 or older, because the initial bill was under the Older Americans Act, and it's been, authorized and increased in funding every year since then. But again, you have to be 18 or caring for someone who's older. And I think it's time that we get rid of age discriminators. In a way, this is reverse age discrimination against the children. And if we don't recognize and support them, if they don't finish high school, then, there's likely to be more teen pregnancy, more disease, more crime, and more ultimate system dependency.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Keisha.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, so it's a great investment. Why would people not want to?
Dr. Arnold, I wanted to just mention, under 18, these children they're administering medicine, they're transporting pills from, bottles to the person that they're caring for, they're dispensing insulin. They're doing a lot of different things. I mean, feeding, bathing, showering. They're just doing a lot of work, and then on top of that, they're doing that, but then they have their schoolwork. They have those activities that they're trying to balance as well. So it's definitely a lot that they're balancing.
Yeah, when I was in high school, the way I started my medical career, I was in high school. I actually went to a hospital and volunteered, right? And I did about 2,000 hours, and most of my time was actually spent in an extended care facility, which would be equivalent to like a nursing home, a long-term care facility kind of setting. And when I went there, I learned so much from the seniors who were there. I mean, it was such an enriching experience for me. And there was such a positive dynamic that I developed with the people there, learned so much about life from them and what was important and how they viewed life and the history and what they did when they were growing up and what they experienced, their stories. And this is also very organic and very germane to family cohesion and how we relate to people who are loved ones in our family, and to help them through a time when they are ill or they are facing, a really devastating disease process is something I could imagine that is really incredibly important, that bond or those times that you're with that person are also extremely valuable. And that's what our society is supposed to be about, and that's the right kind of organic, the kind of people we want to have, people who have compassion, people who are actually willing to help other people. And, to go against that, this seems to be insane to me. It doesn't make sense.
Well, there's a lot that doesn't make sense right now. But you're so right. And, there's a national effort to teach children empathy. And with our kids, you don't have to teach them empathy. And like you said, that relationship when you're taking care of someone is unique. It's deepening. It's enriching. And the children learn life skills. And with support, they just do so well. But they need help. If they don't have support, they can feel frustrated. We had one girl who was so frustrated. Her mom had been disabled after being hit by a drunk driver, and she was so frustrated she hit her mom. And so, can you imagine being a mom and being hit by your child and having to call 911 because you're scared and you don't know what else to do? Mm-hmm. So we were able to work with juvenile justice and support this child and support this family so that they, became whole and looked at this experience in a different way.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, that's critical. I mean, to stabilize those frustrations and, people are really under a lot of pressures. As you were mentioning before, I can imagine this is going on even to a greater extent now with COVID-19, with people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And as people started looking at the disparities because of COVID and who was getting sick, the whole focus was on the patient. There wasn't thought about what's happening in the family, much less the children. And so during COVID and schools being closed, the extent of caregiving for our kids increased. And one of the things we do is provide respite, but families were afraid to have someone from the outside come in. so often that was delayed, so they didn't have the extra support. And when the schools started to reopen, when you feel vulnerable and you've been isolated and you're anxious and you're afraid, it's just really hard to, ask your kids to go back to school, even if you know that that's best for them.
This is so critically important, Dr. Connie. Maybe if there's do you have a website that people can go to? I'm actually asking now because we have a few more minutes to go, but I wanted to at least have you state that a couple of times, or where should people turn to find out more?
Sure, yeah. Our website is AACY.org.
AACY.org.
American Association of Caregiving Youth, AACY.org.
Oh, you made that easy.
Yeah. Well, if things don't have to be this way and they don't have to be this hard.
You simplified a lot
and
of
I bet you anything.
Yeah.
In your medical education, did you learn about family caregiving?
Well, no. I mean, actually, that is something that is not even mentioned or talked about. And I think even when we start talking about, it wasn't until maybe I think the 80s, or early 90s, where people really started talking about even discharge planning, adequate discharge planning, from a hospital. And even then, there's still lapses and there lacks of, there's a lack of connections about, what types of services does someone need when they get back into the home environment? Are the right questions being asked? And there's more of a thing about, discharge planning. But as far as, family engagement, family services, no, that is not part of the medical education right now.
And so we're trying to change that.
Yes.
By working with University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine, and Florida Atlantic University here in South Florida, as well as with the School of Nursing to make sure that family caregiving and caregiving youth are included in the curriculum. It also needs to be among educators, because if they don't understand and, take a look at what else this student is doing, to look at supporting them if they're late for class rather than punishing them, it just makes a world of difference. It's about caring and understanding.
Yeah, it sounds like there needs to be some kind of educational platform or something where the schools recognize this as being an issue, maybe through the guidance department. I'm not sure of who, or the administrator, everything goes to the top, right? So the principal of the school, or the dean, or whoever's the authoritative figure in the school needs to have a plan, just like we have Family Medical Leave Act, right? We need to have something in place so that as someone who is actually going to school has something to refer back to as an administrator that says these are the things that you need to consider if you have a student that has someone who's critically ill or sick.
Right. And we did begin the Caregiving Youth Institute, and we have to postpone our in-person conference that we were going to have. That would be our fourth one this November, and right now we're scheduling it for April 21st.
April 21st. Okay, and where's that going to be? Is it online? Or?
It's going to be in Boca Raton.
Oh, Boca Raton. I may go there myself.
Yeah, come on. I'd love to meet you. But it's just so important for people in healthcare, education, and the community to learn about this population and learn how to support them and learn firsthand what the kids are going through. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be this way. Supporting them in school, out of school, and providing activities gives them a whole new attitude. And we need people to go into healthcare in the future as our population is aging and there's more complex care at home. So what better population than these children to do that?
Right. And it's a social responsibility for all of us, right? So if we see kids struggling with this, we should try to, in any way we can, help to give them some assistance, especially if you're a teacher or someone who, is more, directly connected to their lives, that is recognizing that something is wrong here, something is going on where the person has, is trying their hardest to do fulfill two different roles, which are both can be very, very demanding. And but I love your website, AACY.org. I think that's the easiest one I've ever seen.
Well, if you know the song like YMCA, just think about AACY, right?
Oh, that's it. You just started a new trend, a new fad. We have to get a song going.
Yeah.